Hello class and welcome to our first video lecture. Today we will be talking about culture, what it is, and why it matters. So, what's so special about us? What makes us human and how did we become human? Well, about 200,000 years ago, Homo sapiens, our species, appeared on Earth. These earlier Homo sapiens were almost physically identical to us. Yet as far as we know, they did not create any artistic works or have any religious practices. They didn't have a writing system. Some would say that they were modern humans. Physically, probably were. But others would say they weren't. What do you think? How would you decide? What criteria would you use to determine whether or not they were modern humans? Stop the video and take a second to write that down in your notes. We will discuss it in class. All groups of people have behaviors, activities, and beliefs that they pass on from generation to generation. These constitutes the elements of culture. Certain categories of behaviors, activities, and beliefs are part of the cultural lives of all groups. How these categories are expressed, however, varies from group to group. For example, all people eat foods, but different groups eat different foods and may practice different customs connected to eating. Things like Chinese food, Mexican food, German food, all sorts of different foods that are out there, and a lot of it's based on where people lived and what was available. But then some countries, like the Japanese, have a tea ceremony. There's a certain way tea is supposed to be served. These common categories of activities, behaviors, and beliefs are what we call cultural universals. That brings us to the 7 elements of culture. There's basically 7 parts that must exist for it to be considered a culture. Okay, or at least a separate culture. You have to have these things. First of which is a social organization. Social organization creates social structure by organizing its members into small units to meet basic needs. Within that social structure, there are family patterns, and family is the most important unit of social organization. Through the family, children learn how they are expected to act and what to believe. There are basically 2 kinds of family. You have the nuclear family, which is the wife, husband, and children, over here on the right. This is a typical family in an industrial society like the U.S. Then below, you can see we have an extended family where several generations are living in one household and working and living together. Grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins. Respect for elders is very strong. This is more earlier in United States history. This was very much true to the case. Some of you may live in this type of family where you have several generations living. It's often common in rural areas or in farming areas, and it's often common in a lot of other parts of the world. And finally, there are social classes. They rank people in order to status depending on what's important in the culture. Money, job, education, ancestry. United States, your economic status, your job, your education, the amount of money you make is very important to class. In other parts of the world, it's your ancestry, who your parents were, who your grandparents were, that have a lot more to say about where you stand in the social ranking. And in some countries, economic ranking is not comparable to social ranking. You can be very, very wealthy, but if you're considered to be from the lower class, you stay in the lower class. Okay, then we have customs and tradition. These are rules of behavior, and they're enforced ideas of right and wrong. They can be customs, traditions, rules, and written laws. I'm sure your family has different ways of celebrating certain holidays depending on your religion and your nationality. Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, 4th of July. There's every one of those holidays and other events throughout the year, birthdays and things like that. Each family and culture has different ways of celebrating those. Okay? Rules are simple things like this set of playground rules that are here, but it can be something as far-reaching as the U.S. Constitution. All of these are part of our customs and traditions. They make us who we are. Religion answers basic questions about the meaning of life, supports the values that groups of people feel are important, and is often a source of conflict. We will study a multitude of wars and disagreements that happened simply because somebody had a different version of the same religion, or maybe 2 countries living side by side followed different religions. 3 different kinds of religious structure. You have monotheism. It's the belief in one God. Polytheism is a belief in many gods. Atheism is a belief in no gods. Language. Language is the cornerstone of culture. All cultures have a spoken language or they're not a culture. Okay? Even if there's no writing system, if you have a spoken language, you can be considered a culture. Writing has only been around for about 4,000 years. So prior to that, traditions were handed down orally. In certain parts of the world, like North America, the Native American cultures, the first written language was the Cherokee language. It wasn't begun until the 1830s and 40s by a man named Sequoyah, who began to create the language using some of the English language and the sounds and things like that, and then he created new sounds. Many societies include a large number of people who speak different languages. People who speak the same language often share the same culture, but each language can have several different dialects. Think about the United States. Down south, the term y'all comes in, which it means you all, but we don't really use that up here. We say you guys or something like that. Different words for different things. A sub sandwich is known in New England as a grinder. Around Philadelphia, it's called the hero. Other places have different names for them. So all sorts of different languages. Arts and literature. They're the products of our imaginations, the things we dream up. And a lot of them are based in what the hopes and beliefs and things like that of our society are and what our culture is. And they help us pass on the culture's basic belief. We're going to look at a lot of these things and you'll see how they can really tell us a lot about their people's culture. They're examples of art, music, literature, the folk tales that different societies share. Forms of government. People form governments to provide for their common needs and keep order within the society and protect their society from outside threat. A definition of government is first pure person or people who holds the power in society, but also it can be the society's laws and political institutions. The three main types of government in the world today are democracies, where people have the supreme power and government acts by and with consent. Most democracies actually practice the Republican form of democracy, which is choosing leaders to represent them, because democracy means everybody comes together and votes on everything, and it gets very cumbersome. The bigger the country, the more people involved. And then you have dictatorship, where a ruler or group holds power by force, usually relying on military support for power. We will also look at monarchies, where there's kings and queens and emperors, and a few other types of government as we go along through the year. And then finally, there are economic systems. Okay, economics is basically the study of how people use limited resources to satisfy their wants and needs. And it answers the basic questions of what to produce, how to produce it, and for whom. Traditional economy is one type of economy. People produce most of what they need to survive, either by hunting, gathering, farming, herding cattle, and making their own clothes and tools. This is a more primitive style of society, but also the farther away you are from, I don't want to say civilization, but areas where you can buy and sell things, the more likely you are to do these, to have a garden, to grow animals for food, and to make your own clothing and tools. And you have a market economy, which is kind of the other end. That's the buying and selling of goods and services. Then you have a command economy, which this is more consistent with a socialist or communist type of government. Government controls what and how goods are produced and what they cost. Individuals have little economic power in a command economy. What's available is what's available, and it costs what it costs. And then the United States type of economy is what we call a mixed economy, and that's more the most common economy in the world today. Individuals make some economic decisions. People are going to buy what they want to buy. Companies will try to produce what they think the people want to buy. And then government makes some decisions based on regulation, where they may artificially inflate prices. Those of you who are dairy farmers, you know that there's price support systems in for milk and other dairy products. Okay, so each of these elements shows up in your life on a daily basis, whether you know it or not. Think about family traditions, what type of family you live in, are you religious or not, what your family does for a living, what type of government you live under. Those are all the ways that the culture appears in our lives. So what we're going to be doing in class today is using your 7 element of culture notes. you're going to write an essay that tells how each of the elements is present in your life. The essay should be a minimum of 7 paragraphs with 1 paragraph per element. We will be working on this in class, so I'll see you then.